So is the job what I expected when I first started? Well, when I first started at South Gloucestershire, we were in intervention, and I would have to say that really tested me more than I was expecting. So I found it really hard to go in. I think it needed a different style of leadership. I think it needed something different for me. And it took me a good little while to really adapt to that challenge and think about, okay, so being quite directive isn't my style, but in this situation, that's absolutely what's called for here. So I found that much more difficult. But apart from that, it pretty much was what I'd expected.
Well, yes and no. So I mean, obviously I had worked as an assistant director. I was really familiar with what my DCS did, and I understood a lot of what I was getting into. But I think that kind of variety, some of the pressures, some of the challenges are just not visible to you until you take on the role. So the core of the role is what I was expecting, and what I'm expected to understand is the same. But day to day, more challenging, more fun.
I think the job is a job. I think as a leader, you start to think about sort of your role as a manager, as somebody who helps deliver outcomes. And a DCS could just be, in some way, shape and form, a manager of another team. I think what I've learned over the time, over the last couple of years that I've been DCS, is the sphere of influence gets bigger, and the opportunities to help effect change across the wider system, I think, has become greater. And I think part of me expected it, but the other part of me has been surprised by the sheer potential that role has, and that, you know, is a humbling thing, because it's important to recognise that, you know, in the words of Uncle Ben, with great power comes great responsibility.
I think more or less yes. And I don't think you should be applying for a DCS job unless you have got a pretty clear idea about what it will be like. I think the actual experience, though, of feeling the weight of responsibility, being in quite a lonely place because you're only one of a kind in your local authority, and holding that responsibility in being a really active player around the political table, around the corporate leadership table. You kind of need to do it to really, really understand the kind of ins and outs of that. So it's not that any of that has surprised me, I guess, in becoming a DCS. But like any new role, and when you're stepping into a new space, it takes time to learn it. If I'm honest, I think each significant kind of step up and promotion, it's probably taken me about a year to really feel that I've got right on top of it and I really understand what I'm doing. And of course, that's a pretty nerve-wracking year, not least in a DCS role, because the expectations are people look to you to be confident, to be competent, people expect you to know what you're doing, so you have to, I think, mask some of that anxiety whilst you're still kind of learning the ropes.